in line with the PSAT, so where do you take the PSAT? Many of the independent private schools here in Canada tend to administer the PSAT, sometimes only for their students. And so if you're attending a public school currently and you want to write the PSAT, you could look to the website collegeboard.org, and you should see a list of locations and sites where you could write the PSAT. And if you have any questions about that, call the Prepskills office and we'll respond by giving you specific locations. But there are opportunities for students to take the PSAT administration mid-October, once a year. So that's an opportunity if a student is going into grade 9 this fall or grade 10 this fall. The reason I say that is because my personal belief is that once you move past grade 10, you should be, really in grade 10, you should be on the SAT track. And so, you know, if you're considering taking the PSAT, then doing that in grade 9, doing that in grade 10. Although I have seen some students take it in grade 11, my recommendation for students taking it in grade 11 is if they are American citizens and can apply for the National Merit Scholarship, which is a requirement that they be in grade 11. Other than that, I really encourage the 9 and 10 in order to get that understanding of what the PSAT and SAT experience is like.
Gotcha. So this is important to really be aware that there's some timelines that for parents and students and guidance counselors, if you're not aware of those timelines, it could actually not only impact your application process, but your ability to apply for different scholarships or other forms of support. So these timelines are important. And I know that on the prepskills.com website, there's a lot of information that families and schools can access around what we're talking about today and some of the key timelines to be aware of. So thank you for raising that, Joanna, because I know from a lot of the conversations I've had with guidance counselors over the past 3 or 4 months, those timelines questions are one that is really top of mind for them. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, and that's a good point, Charmaine. And so when we look at timelines, and especially being in a situation right now where there's so much uncertainty, our recommendation is that students really stick to the pre-COVID standards and the pre-COVID timelines. And so anything that changes moving forward, they're not going to really be affected by that. And so, you know, what do I mean by that? We'll get into it, I know, a little later, but some of the schools have opted to have a test optional sort of status moving into the next academic year. However, test optional means that the student is able to decide whether they submit their test score or not. And given that you really don't know how the landscape is going to change, you want to be in a position where you've got power and strength in your application. Again, looking at it holistically. And so if you want to put your best foot forward, then let's use the pre-COVID standards. So in the case of the SAT, for example, if you were looking at a highly selective school that required the SAT and 2 SAT subject tests, then stick to those standards. Now, if that changes and for whatever reason in the next academic year, they make those tests requirements optional, you still have that edge, right? In the sense that they do understand the test, they do understand the scores, and so therefore in submitting those, you would stand out in my mind, especially in a situation right now where we've seen the academic year really turn into a pass-fail sort of scenario. So not really concrete insofar as how did you perform? How did you do? How do they even calculate the GPA, right? So those questions are still up in the air. And in my opinion, something like a standardized test would add that strength and weight to your overall package and portfolio.